Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, we are already into February 2022. Can you believe it? And amidst all the craziness out there, here we are, gathering safely at home together. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Valentine's virtual dinner, a special collaboration with Ascari Hospitality Group and our partners, Morissette Winery and Somm. My name is Kathleen. I'm the Director of Virtual Events here at Ascari. We are so excited that you've signed up for tonight's event, and are actively participating in our intimate and interactive restaurant quality dining experience, where we bring to you a world-class winery, a lively discussion, and you get to sit front row center right in the comforts of home. We're going to be about an hour tonight, and because we are an impressively large group, we ask that you keep yourselves on mute, but please don't be shy. Type in all your questions down on the chat feature, and we'll be sure to have your questions answered. We see that a great number of you are returning again for yet another virtual event with us. We are so grateful and humbled for your continued support. An equally warm welcome goes out to all of you experiencing this for the first time. The overwhelming response from everyone has been the driving force for our ever determined strive towards excellence. This event is but one of many unique at-home experiences Ascari Hospitality Group offers. For almost 2 years now, our team has been dedicated, innovative, and creative in an ongoing endeavor towards one goal: to stay connected with you. Other offers that are currently live are our Family Day Weekend Brunch Ensemble, our very own new wine subscription club that always includes live interactive sessions with each release, and a complete roster of dynamic options for your next corporate, group, catering, gifting, and virtual event needs. If you're ready for an in-person gathering, we are thrilled that our restaurants are reopened again as well, so you can make a reservation at Open Table. And our events and catering division is at the ready to help you pull out all the stops for your next private affair, big or small, at your location. Many of you are also already familiar with our online shop with convenient delivery service, Mercatino e Vini, but this may be some news to some of you that we now have a lovely accompanying brick and mortar store located in Leslieville, just a few steps from Ascari and Oteca. It's the perfect little shop where you'll find a gorgeous lineup of our delicious house-made prepared food and meal kits. There's artisanal groceries, bottled cocktails, an impressive selection of curated wines that are often smaller producer, lesser known, always approved by our wine director and rarely found at the LCBO. You'll find that and so much more. There's no shortage of ways to experience Ascari's trademark warmth and genuine hospitality. We're just thrilled that through the unwavering support from each and every one of you, well, you've enabled us to keep moving forward, doing what we love, and ultimately continue to have you be our guest. We love to hear all of your comments and know that we synthesize all of your feedback to continue evolving our programming. Check out our website at ascarihg.com and follow us at Instagram at ascarihg to keep up to date with all of our offerings as they get released. Okay, so let's move on to our spotlight presentation and intros. Our moderator for the discussion tonight is Ascari Hospitality Group's very own executive chef and co-owner, John Sinopoli. John has been cooking since the late 90s, completing his culinary program in New York City in 2001. Since 2005, John and his business partner, Eric Joyal, have been proprietors in the Toronto restaurant scene, opening 9 unique venues and concepts since then. He also co-founded Save Hospitality, the national coalition to unify the voices of independent restaurants amidst the devastation brought upon this industry by COVID-19. And a few weeks ago, John accepted on behalf of Ascari Hospitality Group the 32nd Annual Pinnacle Award for Best Independent Restaurateur. Somm is a new lifestyle app that is touted as having a sommelier in your pocket, alongside a loyalty program with benefits you actually want. Membership in their 2 crew levels unlock premium guest experiences at a roster of high caliber partners, including Pearl Morissette Winery and our venues like Gare de l'Est Brasserie, Ascari King West, and Ascari and Oteca, which just got a nod from Toronto Life magazine as being one of the city's best bowls of pasta. You can download and use the app for free or upgrade to Somm Crew or Grand Cru to access great benefits. For more information, please visit their website at somm.io. We also look forward to hearing directly from the CEO and founder of Somm, Jennifer Tremblay, a little later in the program. And of course, Pearl Morissette Estate Winery was co-founded in 2007 by Francois Morissette and Mel Pearl as a small winery with an uncompromising vision that values traditional approach to wine growing. In a short time, it has established a reputation in Canada and across the world for delivering premium quality wines rooted in a low intervention philosophy and taking a pragmatic approach year after year in seeking what nature has intended. Their wines are poured in many Michelin star restaurants across Europe and the States, and also at the finest restaurants here at home. Representing the winery tonight, Svetlana Achieva is a classically trained sommelier. And as a partner and the brand ambassador at Pearl Morissette, she has been instrumental in building and establishing it as one of Canada's most admired and respected wineries. She is widely known for the depth of her wine knowledge, her remarkable tasting ability, precise sense of quality, honesty, open-mindedness, irreverence, and high energy. We can't thank Svet and her team enough for their enthusiasm and support over the years, and now Jennifer as well, for helping us breathe life into these collaborations. As love is the central theme to Valentine's, there's certainly no shortage of passion from our featured speaker tonight. Here for the third edition of the Pearl Morissette Virtual Wine Dinner Series, we're honored to present to you Svetlana. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the discussion. Happy Valentine's Day. See you in the chat. Thanks for being with us. Take it away, Chef.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Kathleen, for your lovely introduction and also for all the background and context about what we do here at the Ascari Hospitality Group. I'd love to offer my personal thank you for everyone who's participating this evening. And of course, a special thanks to Jen at Somm and of course, Svetlana, my conversation partner this evening. Svetlana has a long history with the Ascari Hospitality Group. She was our opening sommelier and general manager at Ascari Enoteca and really set the tone for what we do as it pertains to wine in our company. So I think that it's always special to get to chat with her again and to have conversation around wine and St. Valentine's Day and just what they're up to at the winery at Pearl Morissette. It's such an interesting place. So Svetlana, welcome. How's your Saturday going? And I can't wait to start chatting about these wines.
Hi, John, and hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again. My Saturday is going better than ever now that I have everyone here. And as John said, it's always such a pleasure, not only for many, many different reasons, but one of the most important one for me, it's always like whenever we work with Ascari now, and I always have a little bit of I still refer to Ascari as we and as Pearl Morissette as we, is just like coming home and having the wines that we have today or any other wines that we've had before being matched with the Ascari type of cooking is like, for me, it has a deeper level of excitement than doing it with anybody else.
It is true, Svetlana, that it was always amazing to create menus for wine dinners that we were working on together because there was a lot of same wavelength thing going on. And I think that continues today, even though we're not under the same roof anymore. It does feel like home when you're in the building. So that's great. Let's dig into the wine and hopefully everyone's enjoying their dinner. If you have already, or you're doing it later on, of course, you know, eat as you like. I see some people on camera digging in. That's amazing. But let's talk about Irreverence. I mean, of course, we love the name, and this is the third year that this wine's been released. It's not your typical blend of white grapes you see in Ontario, and I think I'd like to talk about blending in general, what the Pearl Morissette approach is, like what happens in the fields, and then what happens in the winery. So walk us through, first of all, the basics of what's in the glass. And how you guys make it. And then I'd like to talk about like your approach to the farming, first of all.
Okay, so as you mentioned, this is only the third vintage in the history of a winery that's been around since 2007. So blending for us, I'm not saying that is the only way, but for us in particular, is a further stage of understanding the region than single vineyard single grape type of wine. And why I say this is because in blending, there's a type of blend which, without being disrespectful to that operation, can be like bottom of the kitchen sink, empty the fridge type of thing. Very simplistic kind of balancing of the elements. For those of you that know us, you know that nothing's ever simple at Pearl Morissette. So it would have been completely unnatural to go this route. For us, blending can be the highest possible answer to the vintage. And what I mean when I say this, it's when you work with grape varieties that are adapted and belong to the area. And when you work with them consistently across the years, across different vineyards, different vintage conditions, you get to identify very subtle little patterns with which they manifest themselves. And within that sphere, you can build a blend that's kind of wrapping itself like around like hidden bridges that exist and has a cohesiveness and a harmony that a simple contrasting of elements can never give you. But in order to identify those bridges, those hidden connections, you need to know your materials or have at least a deeper workable knowledge of your materials than a couple of years are ever possible, are ever capable of giving you.
So are all of these single varietals made into single varietal wines, or on their own, and then you also blend them, or are you growing some of these just for blending, these white varietals?
So we never know what are we going to blend. For people, because now the Irreverence, this is the first time, the 2019 vintage is the first time it's seen life out of the winery, especially for this dinner. The previous vintage, the 2018, was made, is a completely different wining character. Why that is two separate things. One growing condition, one growing series of conditions in 18 was completely different than in 2019. In 2018, we had noble rot. We don't have any noble rot here. 2018 was a very big structural vintage. 29 is sort of a ballerina of a year, very graceful, beautiful wines. Now, in 2018, we also worked with Gewürz, which we've never done on its own. We didn't do it on its own. We did it on the skins for Cuvée Bleu before. Here, there's no Gewürz. Here, there's Viognier. So we have done Viognier before, and what's allowed us to work with it again is that in 2019, we leased the vineyard for 10 years, that we are able to farm on our own, which is a very non-interventionist type of philosophy. And the other two aspects of this wine are Chardonnay and Riesling, which are our two white grape varieties, the ones that we focus the most on, and the ones we truly believe are completely adapted to the area. So it is the irreverence, that's why it's called irreverence, because there's an irreverent way to blending. Part of this wine is done in the skin fermented way, meaning there's part of it that it's orange wine, and you can see it accompanying like all the dishes throughout the menu tonight very, very, very well. So taking all these grape varieties that in and of themselves carry beautiful harmony, carry the imprint of the vintage, and then finding how each year they can connect is a yearly exercise. We're just in the process of blending the 2020, and it will be a completely different type of wine, not because the grape varieties are different, they will be the same. But again, 2020 was a completely different year. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great explanation. I mean, I'd like to talk about the grip. I know where that comes from because it's got the skin contact. But David and Bianca were also asking, there's a touch of funkiness to this wine. Can you elaborate on where that comes from?
So there is a couple of things. Depends what you like. Everybody's got a different way of relating to wine terms. So it depends what you call funkiness. If part of what you call funkiness is the aspect of a little bit of gassiness, both on the palate and a little bit of on the nose, that comes from a high proportion of CO2 in the wine. So for those of you that don't know, we work in the winery the same way we work in the vineyards, meaning with no additions, no chemicals, no anything, and extremely low amounts of sulfur. That's why you can drink both those bottles and not have a hangover tomorrow. I can guarantee you that. It will be useful to drink some water in between, but just saying. And when you don't use sulfur to protect and stabilize the wine, the other thing that you use is CO2, because it's the only thing that wine, as a byproduct of fermentation, naturally releases within like itself. And then it kind of sits like a blanket over the wine and protects it from any other interferences. So that will, you can very easily get rid of that by just shaking a bottle as if you just won Formula One, because that is super fit and the gas will go right out. But not only with our wines, with any wineries around the world that work in a very non-interventionalist, no chemical type of way, you will find the same thing. It is just like a non-interventionalist protection of the wine. And as the wine ages, that gets digested by the wine within its body. So it will disappear. But as I said, if you want to get rid of it right now, that again, imagine you won the Formula One.
That's awesome. I agree with you that this wine could pair with both courses. And I think that it's really interesting. You guys make white wines that have structure, and they're not white wines that only go with salumi or only go with, you know, a salad with seafood. They're wines that can often go with most proteins. And I think that I love that versatility. I love this wine. I think that you're right. There's a funk on the nose that doesn't come through on the palate. It fools you a touch, and the aromatics are just incredible. And the fact, I love in the description, it is bone dry, but it doesn't drink like it. Talk to us about the fruit and why it doesn't come off as so dry in the palate, but of course we know that it is.
So this is the same. So I'm going to say that for those of you that are not familiar, none of our wines across the board ever have any sugar. Everything is completely dry. We do make wines with a lot of structure and texture. Two reasons. One is just luckily enough, tends to be the type of wines that both Francois, who's our winemaker, and me prefer, because we believe that wine is food and it should match food not only in flavors but also in structure. And also, first and foremost, because these are the qualities that you can find across Niagara naturally year in and year out. So let's say you take a Prince Edward County wine, they would never be as structured and as textured because the soils are different there, the climate is slightly different. So you always have a lot more acidity and a lot more forward aromatics. That is just the skeleton of the wine that part of Ontario gives them. In Niagara, when you think about it, and I know everybody likes to compare it to Burgundy, but it's not. It's actually, in terms of the characteristics that define a wine region, it's much closer to the Rion Valley, where you will also find structured whites and very structured reds. So here, the aromatics are always there, but they precise themselves more with aging. But what Niagara gives you straight from the get-go is that chewable aspect that is not related to alcohol. This is 11.5% wine, but it still fills your mouth. So alcohol in and of itself does not mean body. Like body can be achieved in many other ways, but you have to have naturally in the grapes it gives you, and we do in general in Niagara. And then the type of body it has will vary from the vintage. As I said, this is a very different type of wine than the previous 2018. So it's how do I put it? It's like the fruit itself and how it expresses. It's again one of those. It's a result of our blending decisions. And let me tell you, those blending decisions take forever. Francois and I started working on the blends that of some wines that are gonna go to bottle in May, in January, and that's probably not gonna be finished until the end of March. It's like you start with 20 different options and you narrow it and you narrow it and you narrow it and you narrow it until you got the one.
So a couple more questions. What is the percentage of each grape in the Reverence?
So this one doesn't have its tech notes ready yet, but in the so I cannot give you exact percentages, which you're familiar. If you're familiar with our tech notes, you see it's like 52.3. This is predominantly Riesling, meaning around 50%, probably around 30 something percent Chardonnay, and then the rest of Viognier. Now, that being said, there's a portion of the Viognier and the Riesling that was not made as a white wine, but that was made as an orange wine, meaning it was fermented on the skins in big Georgian amphoras called Kvevri, and aged there for 12 months and then blended in with the whites. That's why I call this wine a postmodern orange wine.
Amazing. I was just about to ask you which grapes were made with skin contact, and you answered the question. So that's great. People are saying they very much appreciated the insight into the soil difference between Prince Edward County and Niagara. Another person asked, what does it mean not to be dry in the palate, but considered to be a dry wine? So, I mean, that was me basically saying it's so fragrant and aromatic that you would think that it's an off-dry wine, but it's not off-dry. It finishes completely bone dry. There is no residual sugar at all in this wine. It's fully fermented, so it's not.
When people talk about technically dry wines, it means it's, and that's how we talk about technically dry. It means that all the sugar from the grapes is completely fermented. Now, if you talk about there's other aspects that, for example, LCBO has a lot of quote unquote dry wines, meaning they're perceptibly dry, but not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, there was a study that said that the general level of sugar in the wines of LCBO, like Napa Valley Cabernet is one of the biggest one, is anywhere between 10 to 15 grams of like sugar, which
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's just a lot. So someone commented in the chat, and I want to kind of go back to this question. You compared Niagara more to the Loire Valley than to Burgundy.
Rhone Valley.
Rhone Valley. Oh.
Rhone Valley, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Rhone Valley. I misheard you. That I've never heard that before. I've heard, of course, Loire Valley because we grow Cabernet Franc, and Burgundy because we grow Chardonnay. We grow cooler climate grapes. The Rhone Valley is quite far south in France. I know that has elevation, and there's like an effect of like ocean breezes coming up a steep valley, but at the same time, it's really hot there. What makes you compare Niagara?
We're hotter. We're just hotter than that.
Because because you're comparing the summers and not the winters, of course, right? So
exactly, and this is something that people don't really think through. The fact that it's as cold as it is outside right now, the vines don't really care. They're hibernating, they're covered in snow, they're insulated. What defines the ripeness of the fruit is the growing season, as well as the shortness or the length of the growing season. funnily enough, both the Loire Valley and Burgundy are cooler than our, than the equivalents of the grape varieties we grow here.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever Francois and I are in either of those places and we bring our wines, most of the time the feedback is we never knew Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc Chardonnay is different because there is California. Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc can have that texture. Now, the other aspect of that is that now Loire Valley is getting warmer and the Cabernet Francs will start approximating more what we have here. And Burgundy is also getting much warmer to the point where some people are already planting Grenache and Malbec in there. So anybody that feels that Burgundy and Loire or any other established region will stay the way it's been and will continue producing wines of the same character, I'm sorry, it's not true.
This is a perfect segue into a question I love to ask winemakers, and we've done 2 of these, Svetlana, and I've now asked you this question before, but I've asked it of every winemakers, and I've had some very interesting answers from different winemakers around the world. Of course, we did one of these events with Chateau Moussard, and Tarek from the winemaker from there had a crazy answer, and then winemakers from California, totally different answer. How does Pearl Morissette plan to adjust to climate change? What are you doing now in terms of future plantings or work in the vineyard that is going to help you, I guess, continue to make quality wines in the face of much hotter weather with more extreme weather as well?
So this is a very interesting question because I imagine the way a place like Chateau Moussard with such a long established history deals with it is very different than what we are doing. In order for a region to develop its identity, the most important thing is to identify, again, the plant that is most suited to connect the soils and the climate. Now, you can view Niagara, well, it is a very young growing region, and by virtue of that, having like a huge amount of challenges to overcome because there's 43 approved grape varieties in Niagara, which is something normal, quote unquote, for a region that is kind of just finding its ground. Now, that being said, it's also very distracting, especially if you're working in a way to make wines to satisfy a palate. Like satisfying people's palates is not the same as figuring out what your region is about. On the positive side of that equation is the fact that because there's so many different plantations, different vineyards, different soils, you can have, like, tradition is not so much of a shackle around you. You have no problem. I'm sure a lot of people in Burgundy, let's say, got a heart attack when somebody planted Grenache and Malbec in there. That's centuries of tradition. While here, that's just common thinking. Now, on top of that, what is, again, very challenging on one side, but sort of gets you trained more so than like any established wine regions for what is coming, is the fact that by where Niagara is, they call it not Atlantic continental, maritime continental, some crazy thing like that, because the Great Lakes have almost the same influence as a huge body of water. But we are in a continental climate. So since 2007 until now, we have not had 2 vintages that have even parallel or somewhat parallel characteristics about themselves.
Wow.
So you kind of have to go with the flow, which, believe me, it's like it's scary every year. Like in 2020, we had a year with no disease, drought. In the vintage that just passed, we were not only drowning, but there was so much disease that just as like on Monday, we were hanging out with the guys of Cave Springs, and they had talked to a farmer that's been around since the 70s and said, the last vintage that was like this, like what we just went through, was 1976.
Wow.
So you never know what to expect. And with us, that like we've grown organically since day one, that becomes even more challenging because you're not spraying herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. Everything, like the kind of fungi and pathogens that you have this year may be completely different the year after or completely absent. So you have to think and trust and sort of have faith in your skills, but without going through that exercise, you will never allow the vines, the plant, to actually fully adapt to those conditions. If you constantly protect them, they will constantly be susceptible. So you have to have respect for the natural processes. And I'm making it seem as if it's this well, I'm not making it seem as fairy tale, but it's like, oh, let loose. But sometimes when you let loose, like in 2019, you lose vineyards. We did not host 2 of our 3 vineyards in 2019 because like the fruit was just like, you couldn't make anything of that.
Mike just made a comment I thought is very perfect. It's just like children. There's only so much holding on tightly you can do. I can relate to that. I think, in short, the answer is very carefully. So just so you know, the answer from the winemaker from Chateau Moussard about how they were dealing with climate change was buying more land at higher elevation.
Yes, and that actually,
which is only possible in certain areas of the world. In Napa, you can't do that. In Niagara, you can't do that. So but buying land at higher elevation was his answer to the future of his vineyard, of his winery.
Or go further north. I mean, if you can expand, that's Miguel Torres, like from Spain. When I was talking to him, he said the same thing. You either go up to have that day-night amplitude, or you go north. Why do you think there is an English sparkling industry now? And within 10 years, it's not gonna be just sparkling. Or there's vineyards in Norway and Denmark, because you cannot make wine from raisins. And most of Southern Europe is turning into that with the grape varieties that are currently planted there. So their only option, hence what I've been saying about Burgundy, is to plant a grape variety that will give you a balanced taste at these warmer temperatures. So where Grenache and Syrah were in the south before, now they're slowly moving further up north.
Yeah, interesting. So quick question from Danielle, is the 2019 Irreverence available? I believe the answer is no right now.
No.
This is an exclusive event for this wine, which is part of the relationship that we have with Pro Morissette is we get the special treatment and we pass that special treatment along to our lucky clientele. That this is at the moment not released.
Not released. It's gonna be released in June.
In June, there we go. So you are tasting the future, basically.
Yeah, you're tasting the future. That being said, I want to say something about the previous vintage that's been long sold out since fall last year, but Jen at the Somm has it in a special pack, a special Pro Morissette pack. We took some from our library because we do keep a lot of our wines in library. So if you're interested in the previous vintage, is definitely like it is part of that pack.
That's a perfect opportunity to bring Jen into the conversation. Jen from our partner at Somm. Somm's a really interesting app that puts a sommelier in your pocket and allows you to not only access interesting wines, but learn about what you like and create your own palette along the way. So Jen, why don't you jump on and explain to us what you guys have put together with Pro Morissette? Oh, is Jen there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there she is. But she can we? There we go.
There we go. It's just on mute there, but yeah, thanks so much for having me today. I'm Jennifer, founder and CEO of Somm, and this is really exciting. We work both with Pro Morissette and the full Ascari hospitality group. So in your little kit that was delivered with the wonderful food and the 2 wines, you would have seen this little postcard here. On the back, it has a little explanation of what Somm Cru and Grand Cru actually is. And as mentioned by Svetlana and John, we did put together an exclusive bundle of Pro Morissette wines. It's 3 wines, and one of them is the 2018 Irreverence. So it's always fun to sip through the years. And then the other extra special thing that we do with Pro Morissette, if you're a Somm Cru and Grand Cru member, is special tastings. And then on the Ascari side, whether it's King West, Enoteca, Mercatino, Gare de l'Est, you can always start your evening with a welcome glass of wine or bubbly on the house, or get 10% off every time you shop at Mercatino, which I live on the East End. I'm so happy Mercatino is on the East End. I'm there all too often. It's delicious. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. I will get the truffle cannelloni as often as possible. It's absolutely amazing. But check out Somm Cru and Grand Cru. You have 3 complimentary months of it on the house as part of participating in tonight's beautiful event. As mentioned kind of at the beginning, we are a tech company. We're brand new to the Canadian tech market. We're based in Toronto. I'm a foodie at heart. This is totally started out of passion. We kind of have 2 sides to the company. One is the recommendation engine, which does take the guesswork out of wine and really helps you understand, what goes into a pairing, but it's designed really intuitively, really simply, and really beautifully. And then the other side, of course, is my favorite feature, which is the Somm Cru and Grand Cru membership program. So check it out, have some fun. There's lots to discover and enjoy. And thanks for having me tonight. I've been sipping alongside over here, and it's no surprise that everything is absolutely delicious. Thanks, guys.
Amazing. Thanks for that. We did have a question about the food, Jen, so I'm going to speak. Someone asked, David and Bianca asked, like, what's the fabulous dish you're eating? I'm not sure which one you got in front of you, but we did put together a special kind of more luxurious menu than we normally do for Valentine's Day. And this pasta crown with a pink beet ricotta filling is something that our team at Ascari put together. And we really love putting these together for you. And of course, when we do design these dishes in the menu, we keep the wines in mind. And I think that I know and love the style of Pro Morissette wines. I love the full mouth of flavor and the complexity and layers that are involved. So for me, if I have a super complex wine and what has a lot of layers and a lot to it, what I do is try to keep the food actually as simple as possible and not too many layers and not too many items on the plate. So you'll see that the food tonight is very simple, but very complex. And if you were smart and got the truffle upgrade with the truffle slicer, I hope you shave a ton of that on both of these items, because I think both with the brioche encrusted chicken and the pasta crown, it goes beautifully. And what is the secret of the caramel, the bonbons you guys got? The secret is to hire an incredibly talented pastry chef, which we have done here at the Ascari Hospitality Group. Johanna Lacour is our pastry chef, and she put together the desserts in your kit this evening. And man, they don't only look spectacular, but they eat incredibly well. They're just so delicious. And she's just so great with chocolate work. And that's a real asset around Valentine's Day. So we're super happy to have her as part of the team. Svetlana, let's start talking about the red. I think we have a Cabernet Franc in front of us. Shocker from Pro Morissette. We're drinking Cabernet Franc this evening. Let's talk about why Cabernet Franc is the red grape for the Niagara region, first of all. Like in general, what about this grape is so amenable to what we do in Niagara? And let's talk about the soil type a little bit as well, because there's less Cab Franc grown in Prince Edward County, more Pinot, and why is Cabernet Franc, what does it fit Niagara region better?
So, wow, John, and then you want me to keep it short?
Okay.
Just
Yeah, come
go
on.
on that.
I mean, brevity
Um,
is not either of our strengths, but for tonight, we're going to
Exactly.
make it work. Yeah.
So let's just start from the second question. Grape varieties, in and of themselves, without the growing conditions that surround them, have their own structure. Pinot Noir is a thin-skinned grape variety with a lot of phenols that are very aromatic, meaning that's why when you have Pinots from Burgundy, especially Burgundy of yore, you have an amazing perfume. And in order to have a wine that aromatic, the wine has to be built on acidity. Now, if you work with your natural conditions, meaning you don't add acidity, uh, you need a cooler region and a certain type of soil. Pinot really likes limestone, which is present in the county, and it's calcareous in the county, completely different than the limestone that is Niagara, which is dolomitic. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, the county tends to be cooler. So the Niagara. So the sum of different soil, cooler, also drier conditions. For those of you that have spent some time in the county, you know, you'll be sitting there and Niagara will be getting pounded by a passing storm, so will Toronto. And then you're sitting in the county and then you just see the storm pass on the mainland and not hit the county. Pinot likes those drier conditions. So in and of itself, that works there. Cabernet Franc likes slightly warmer temperatures, first and foremost, and secondly, is a grape with much smaller berries, much thicker skins, much more textural. So when you ripen grapes, you're not only talking, I mean, if you're pro Morissette, you're not at all talking about the sugar, because sugar gives alcohol, alcohol has no flavor. You're talking about the ripeness of the flavors. And where those flavors are is not in the pulp. They're in the seeds and in the skins. So if you don't ripen your skins, you will have green wine, like no matter what you do. And in Prince Edward County, it's very hard to ripen Cabernet Franc because of all of those things I just quoted. So if you ask me, the main differences between Niagara and Prince Edward County is that Pinot definitely, in the classical sense of classical character of Pinot, does way better in the county, while Cabernet Franc, like if you have a Cabernet Franc from the county, at most it's a very easily drinkable red wine, and whether it's made from Cabernet Franc or any other grape doesn't really matter. Cabernet Franc in the county cannot achieve through natural means that textural richness that Niagara gives you. How we isolated Cabernet Franc is, for us, this is the red grape of Niagara, followed closely by Gamay. As of 2018, we've discovered Lemberger. And even though Francois first came here to do Pinot, now Pinot in our heads has just been slowly going down that ladder, not because you cannot make good Pinot. You can make very good Pinot in Niagara, but at Pearl Morissette, it's always making wines at a world-class level that can compete like with everybody else in the world. And making those Pinots in Niagara, it's a 1 in 7, 8 year occurrence. And it's gonna be rarer and rarer because it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer. Now, when you have vine, and of the grape variety that in the case of Francois before coming to Niagara, he had never worked with, when you're farming in a non-intervention way, I always say nature is very good at telling you what belongs. And in order to make wines like these, in order to discover what the region actually wants to say, you cannot hold yourself up to people buy Pinot, people buy Chardonnay. It says who?
Right.
I say people buy good wine. Like 3 years ago, we weren't making any Lemberger. Lemberger produces an outstanding wine, and it's now become one of our best sellers. Why does it produce outstanding wine? It's because the grape variety is adapted. You have way less work to do in the vineyard. You're discovering the natural harmony within the place and what is the grape that expresses it in the most transparent way. And Cabernet Franc, in that sense, to me, is by far the signature red grape of Niagara. As I said, whenever we go to Loire, Bordeaux, everybody says, like, we did not know that is possible. And I always say, not to be falsely modest, it's not us, it's Niagara. All we do is not try to make Loire Cabernet Francs or Bordeaux blend. Right. Like, if a grape variety gives you a wine of so much eloquence, meaning it expresses the growing conditions of one vintage over another, not over another, next to another, or different vineyards, that is the same quality as Pinot in Burgundy has traditionally had, or Riesling in Germany. This is your medium. And, you know, not to go too nerdy, but Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the
medium,
message.
not the message.
Yeah.
So I love it. And I'll tell you, as I read your description of this 2020 Racine du Ciel, and I would love you to talk about what we're drinking and the flavor behind it. Because, I mean, not everyone, if anyone visited Ascari and Oteca anywhere between 8 and 10 years ago, and you read a wine list, you were used to this language, you were used to these descriptions, and you probably had to bring your thesaurus or dictionary with you to capture what was in the glass. But here we have a Cabernet Franc that is equal parts fire and water, earth and air. So of course you're talking about I'll decipher a little bit for the group. We're talking about the elements. We're talking about, I think that what you're saying here is that this really represents the terroir in a unique way.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that it's not just fruit and it's not just vibrancy. There's earthiness to it, but there is also a flow. And not to interrupt, but there's like Racine du Ciel is roots of the sky, and it refers to a book, but it's not about the book. It's about the inversion of the idea that, you know, if you think of, and I know there is a tree in the University of British Columbia, like an oak tree that they've uprooted and put the crown in the earth and let the roots go into the sky. It, like, you know, the roots became crown and the crown became roots. So Cabernet Franc can do that here all the time and have that water, fire, air, and earth define the complexity of its perfume year in and year out.
I mean, this wine is so rich. I was almost shocked at the texture, and like, yeah, it's smooth. It has like a I wouldn't say velvety because it's not that soft, but it's so deep and rich, and it's really, I find it super interesting because it has zero of that typical unripened Cabernet Franc vegetal green kind of texture. This is a perfectly ripe wine with a palate that is ripe with fruit, but it finishes with a very soft acidity, and right at the end, I find. And I'm talk to us about, you know, what was this growing season like? How did that contribute to what's in the glass? And then how did you take what the grapes gave you in the winery, and how did you adjust your treatment?
So, Recindy said this is only the second vintage of this wine. The first one was 2018, and we lost that vineyard in 2019 because of powdery mildew, you know, talking about climate
Mhm.
change. 2020 was probably, not probably, it was the best year in Niagara in a long, long, long time.
Hmm.
If you couldn't make good wine in Niagara in 2020, you just should definitely change careers. Whether you're working interventionally, non-interventionally, there's very little disease. Now, that being said, what I can assure you will come out of 2020 is a lot of very big wines. Because Niagara generally likes concentration, or people, it's not even that Niagara likes concentration. People in Niagara think that consumers prefer concentration over balance. That has not been my experience at all. But 2020 gave you grapes that can be so ripe in sugar that you can make California wines no problem. I'm very happy and flattered that you commented on the acidity, because for us, having a rich wine, but having it not weigh down your palate and having this acidity, and you can have this with pasta pomodoro, no problem.
Yes.
For us, that is essential because we like balance. I always say, and I already said it earlier today, wine is food, and in a balanced dish, you look for all the elements. That's what makes delicious delicious. So we did the exact opposite of what most people did in 2020, which is try to slow down the ripening in order to preserve the balance within the wine. Because again, a lot of other people would put artificial acidity or would put this and that. We just don't do that. So if you don't have balanced fruit, we don't have balanced wine. It's
So
very
do you slow the ripening by keeping some more foliage along the grapes, creating more shade?
the opposite, because a lot of people don't think about it, me included, before going to Niagara. It's actually when you have like the leaves are the photosynthesis factories of the vine. So the more leaves you have, unless like there are too many and they're actually exhausting the vines, the more leaves you have for a small portion of fruit, the faster you will ripen your grapes.
Oh, so it's not the sun hitting the skin of the grape, it's the sun hitting the leaf. Oh, amazing. Interesting.
And that for me was one of the biggest realizations when I came.
That's a big, that's big. I didn't know that.
You can de-leaf a certain way where it will still protect the grapes, but that's not about ripening. That's protecting them from sunburn, especially white grapes can sunburn, so you can protect them, but you're constantly looking for the most appropriate ratio between those chlorophyll factories that actually which are the leaves that actually produce the energy to ripen the grapes. So we would actually leave as many as possible, but also leave small little clusters. We generally avoid green harvesting because again, we don't like concentration. But in a year like that, we would completely abstain from it because every single little cluster will slow down the ripening and give you like a better chance at natural balance. So, and then you just taste.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher had a great question, which was on my mind as I was drinking this. It's big, it's rich, and to me, the tannins are maybe not completely integrated yet. What is the aging potential of this wine?
So for those of you that, a lot of you will probably be familiar with our top Cabernet Franc, which is Cuvée Madeleine. Even in a quote unquote smaller year in the Madeleines, you're looking at least 15 to 20 years. Anything with a black label, a Pearl Morissette, comes from our home farm vineyard, meaning the vineyard that's on the property. And in the case of the Irreverence, the vineyard that we lease as well. But Black Label for Pearl Morissette signifies some more approachable wines, meaning early on in their life. This would definitely go for another 10 years easy, but it cannot be compared to the Madeleine. Why that is, again, it's not because we try and make it this, it's because this is what the grapes give you. And if anything, both Francois and I have the tendency to make the wines like as serious as they can be, which can be the stupidest business decision, meaning you need to wait longer and longer and longer in order to release them. But what you're tasting in the 2020 is there's softness, there's openness towards the wine.
Right.
But there's also the tannins of 2020. As I mentioned, it was a very dry season. And just to give you a perspective, in a certain, I mean, it was valid across all the vineyards, but let's say in half of the vineyards in 2019, which is more of a normal vintage, we got 10 tons. We got 10 tons from double the space in 2020. So your yields are much, much, much slower. And that's not because there are less grapes on the vines, but because the berries are much, 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 much smaller.
Less hydration, yeah.
Yes, that's what drought stress produces, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it gives you natural structure. This wine has seen zero new oak. Like, it's all 100% neutral.
Oh.
And all of the tannins that you're tasting there, there's straight grape tannin. That is it, and that is that. And it's still very young. It's not even 2 years old. But grape tannins also integrate very fast within the wine. And this is how we... it's just a lot of small decisions that you need to make, because if you capture that wine in a year like that too far into the process, you will lose the freshness. But if you capture it too early, you will have a lot of freshness and none of the structure. 2020 is that beautiful vintage where you can have both. So this wine can definitely age, but at the same time, like the 2020 Madeleine, just to give you a perspective, that comes from much older vines, that is still in foudre and in barrel. It's not going to be bottled for at least another 2 years, not going to be released for like another 4.
Right.
So yeah, it's all these little small things that you have to consider.
I think so. A couple comments coming through the chat, which I love. One is that Stuart said that Irreverence is so good with the dessert, it brings out the chocolate notes. I love dry white wine with dessert and cheese. And I think that, that's a great observation, 100%. A lot of people think red wine and chocolate go together. I couldn't disagree more. Yeah. I hate drinking red wine and chocolate together. Give me a dry white or a crisp Chenin Blanc or something. I think it's much better with anything rich, fatty. And most desserts are rich and fatty, even though they have sugar. So that makes sense. And then, go ahead.
No, the only thing I was going to say that a lot of people think white wines don't go with chocolate is because chocolate has got natural tannin. Most white wines do not. This one does. I don't know if you're going back and forth between the two, but it is arguable which one of those two wines got more tannin, whether it's the red or the white. And I remember even last year's Valentine's, when me and John were tasting together with the previous vintage of the Irreverence, like there are a lot of white wines that are a lot more powerful and textural and can play with something like chocolate in a much more harmonious way than a red wine that will just give tannin over tannin. And it would just be like, who's first?
Especially if you've made your chocolate with tropical fruits, I find.
Yeah.
Passion fruit with chocolate and a skin contact wine like this is incredible. So can the Irreverence be aged as well, given the tannic structure?
Oh, the
Of
Irreverence,
course.
out of the old white wines that, all of the white wines that we've done, because of that skin ferment aspect of it, is right up there with, like, so our top white wines are 19e Chardonnay. Depending on the vintage, can be aged again for a long time. But the same thing as the Madeleine, 10 years easily, 10 to 15, and Black Bowl Riesling. Irreverence takes its structure again from those small little bridges I was mentioning earlier, and from the skin fermentation. But
Right.
I cannot tell you how long it'll age, because we just started working with that wine in 17 and then 18 and now 19. But it will be at least as long as the Chardonnay, because you see, it's got the acidity, it's got the tannin. And for those of you that are familiar with the Irreverence, when we first released the last vintage, I just knew that's gonna be like the next Roslana or Black Bowl for Pro Morissette.
Yeah, yeah.
It just triggered people in so many different ways, because it's a wine of such multifacetedness, but that delivers longevity, complexity, beauty, and harmony through the touch of the blend, as opposed through only the vineyard itself. And that's why I was saying earlier that it can, like, a blending done like that, it can be the highest possible answer to the vintage.
Yeah, I mean, I love that answer. The last dinner we did, Svetlana, was with Stratus, and of course, blending is their MO, and their approach is, like you said, so time consuming, where they vinify every plot and varietal in its own tank and then blend them all together. It's so time consuming, and it shows the maturity of a wine region when you can blend properly. Look, we're coming to the end of our chat here. It seems like we just started 5 minutes ago, but it's already after 8 o'clock. I'd like to say a very special thank you to everyone in the chat who engaged, asked us questions, participated, got something interesting out of this. I think that we cannot recommend the wines of Pro Morissette more. They're always on our wine list. They're such great food wines. And for us, what we do is so integral to bring those two worlds together. And of course, Svetlana, I mean, it's like calling up your old sister and having a conversation after a few months and catching up on everything.
Sister.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, true. I am older than you by a long shot. I didn't mean you're older. I meant
I'm
like
just
a sister from a long
joking.
time ago. A special thank you to Jennifer at Somm for their partnership and support on this. And please look out for the special package of Pro Morissette wines she's putting together, because you'll be able to get this, the 2018, some very cool library wines that that Pro Morissette wines sell out very quickly. And they like, getting some library wines is not common. You gotta know somebody. So tonight somebody, and that's us and Janet, Somm, and Svetlana. Thanks to everyone. Thank you to our whole team at Ascari. I always gotta say a special thank you, because it seems like a couple of us are on a chat and you got a good box of food and dinner was nice. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that do a ton of hard work going into this. It starts with our events and sales team, Kathleen and Dawn and Joanna and Olivia and everybody there. And of course, also our kitchen team. There's an army of people that put all of this together for you. Yes, I sit down with my guys. We create the menu and with our pastry chef, but it's really an incredible team of people that can cook, package, and put this together so that you can enjoy it in your own home in a professional manner. And that's no small feat. So thank you to everybody. And thanks for all your support. Let's make sure that we've got this pandemic in the rearview mirror. Our restaurants are open. Please come down and check us out. We are really, really excited to put all your bums in our seats and show you what a good time means again after a couple of years of some strange hospitality. We want to get back to the core of hospitality. And for us, that's smiles, it's warmth, it's conversation, and it's welcoming. And that's what our team does best. And Svetlana knows that because she was a crucial part of that back in the day. And yeah, so we're just super grateful. And happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. You know, I think these wines are enjoyed equally alone as together. So I'm not going to put the couple pressure on anybody. I think that you can drink these wines alone and enjoy it as much as if you're enjoying it with your partner. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support. We're going to sign off and say thank you. Thanks for all your notes and encouragement. And we're doing another virtual wine event around Easter. Please visit Mercatino e Vini on 1091 Queen Street East. It's an incredible little retail experience we put together. We have all of these wines, nothing you find in the LCBO, a lot of our prepared foods, a lot of the things that we cook on the menus at the Ascari and Gardelest are in the fridge and freezer there for you to take home and enjoy. Thank you, everybody. Svetlana, thank you. Give my love to Francois.
If I can just say 2 things to first underscore the professionalism of Ascari, not because I used to work there, but we have done like a lot of events over the last couple of years. Nothing ever measures, like not even comes close to the professionalism of the whole team Ascari, like at Ascari. And I'm like, I know I'm not part of it anymore, but I'm always like so proud to see the organization, the precision. It's so wonderful to be able to collaborate again like that. And thank you for having, like, this is our second Valentine date together, and I think it's very appropriate. I wouldn't do it with anybody else, John, just so you know.
Amazing.
I cannot wait to come and visit soon. And the parting thought about the wines I'm going to say, I know a lot of people think they have to know about wine in order to enjoy it. Since the time I was at Ascari, and then even more so now with the restaurant in Pearl Morissette, and we have a bakery, the first and foremost thing I say to the staff that I train, and I'll say to you, you don't need to know what's in the box in order to decide whether a wine is good. It's actually the opposite. If you forget what you think you know about wine and you just allow yourself to experience the wine just like you experience a plate of food, you will know. And then you can deduct from there. But this is how we work on a production side. It's like people say we should do Pinot. Well, you taste it and you're like, meh. It's good, but it's not excellent. And everybody's got that palate. You can learn about your taste, and your taste is the most important thing. It will, like, your taste will show you quality for sure.
Here. Agreed. Couldn't agree more. And that's what makes, I think, our service team at Ascari special, is that we love to do the professionalism without the pretension. And I think that kind of approach, which you encapsulated so well when you worked for us, was everybody can be a wine expert, whether it's the first glass you've ever drank. And I think that's the key. So anyway, thank you, Svetlana. We'll see you soon. Hopefully our next event is in the house in person, and we'll see everybody on this chat soon in the restaurants. Thank you so much for your support, everybody. Have a great evening. Special thank you to Kathleen for her organization and introduction. Good night, everybody.
Good night. And happy Valentine's. Happy Valentine's, John.
Happy Valentine's, Svetlana.
Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your
everybody.
weekend.
Thank you.